We are back again. Hi, guys. Main Street Randyland YouTube channel. We are here on location at Randyland trying to show you more fun stuff and the history of the amusement business through the wonderful world of Randy. And you know, we all know video games today. I mean, gosh, we take them for granted. We got them on our iPhones, and we've got them on, you know, consoles at home and home computers. They've been around for a long time in arcades. But, you know, there was a time video games didn't exist. None. It was a better time, to be honest with you. Although a lot of video games are really cool and really nice, it was a simpler world when you had the electromechanical games and everything. You know, you shot the guns, you hit the target, and it went ding and clang. It was a certain feeling to the mechanics of the machine, which video games, being computerized, you don't hear anything. It's all going on internally through the electronic circuits of it. It's pretty silent. It's a silent world except for the speaker that is making a little bit of a noise for you as a player to adapt to the game. But everybody kind of knows the Pong, you know, TV ping pong, Pong, with the paddles that went up and down, the ball that went back and forth, and it was a big hit, and it's acclaimed to be like the first video game, but it really wasn't. There was a game called Computer Space that was actually out before Pong. And oftentimes, if you found a Computer Space, you'd find a Pong because they came out in the vicinity of each other. But be that as it may, Pong was certainly one of simplicity that everybody could play, where Computer Space was more difficult and didn't get the same acclaim, although now it's quite coveted to have a Computer Space. And, you know, people ask me, oh, how come you don't have a Computer Space? Well, you know, you can't have everything. You know, I do have one, but it's not here. Show you another time. And, you know, Pong was made as a few different knockoffs also. They made TV ping pong, they made paddle ball, a few different things, because right away everybody was trying to jump onto the bandwagon of making video games because it was a big hit. It was something new. You know, they had, you know, home versions even in the beginning. Magnavox made a game called Odyssey, which back in the early 1970s was $200-something, and you attach it to your TV. Basically, you only played Pong, TV ping pong. And then they had a couple other game variations, but you were buying a Pong machine for your home, and it was a lot of money, and some people had it. It had an interesting feature, too, on the box with the two knobs. The one had a little knob on the inside that you could actually make the ball, as it's traveling back and forth, you could turn it and make the ball go, you know, a little bit of turn, which I don't remember them ever having an arcade version like that, so that was a little interesting. But arcades started getting into video games, and they were all jumping on the bandwagon, and everything was black and white back in those days. There were no color video games. You know, we had color television. There were no color video games because they hadn't gotten to such extreme technologies at that point. So after Pong was such an enormous success, all the companies were trying to get into what they can make that's going to be similar in, you know, attraction and appeal. So there were a slew of early black and white video games which people don't know. They never heard of because they weren't made in super mass productions, and they're long since gone, and maybe they weren't the most popular games in the world, but they're very important because without them, the industry would not have evolved and developed into the games which everybody knows, such as Asteroids and Space Invaders and Scramble, and, you know, all these games that came later came about because of the predecessors. And here are some of them now. I have quite a few, but these I acquired in a collection, and I've never fired them up, and I think it would be very difficult to get them running and keep them running, and I question how much of an appeal it would have to players to actually play them. A few of them are special to me because I remember them and I thought they were really good games, and that starts over here. Down on the end, we have Checkmate, made by Bally Midway. And it's actually a game similar to chess, but you're not moving chess pieces. It's a block game. It's, you know, 2 players. I think this one goes up to 4 players. Wow, it's a 4-player checkmate. But the idea was you would alternate placing blocks in a line. And it would be making like a big snake, and you go around the screen, and you wanted the other players to crash into another snake of another player before they were able to add another block. So you tried to block people in and eventually be the last one standing. And it was a fun game. Would just alternate. It was very tony as far as sound. It would go bloop, 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 as you're placing blocks, and it would get a little faster in speed. And that was a fun game. And I remember playing that game in Keensburg Amusement Park at Bevan Wally Sportland, which later on I ended up buying the Fascination right next door. So it has a good memory for me. I played that game with a couple friends of mine that came down from high school. I remember Ron Colhurst and I had a good time playing that. Jimmy Glazer, we played it too. But that game is special to me because of the memories I have playing it. Just to the side of it to the right, we have an Avalanche. Now, the first and only time I ever played Avalanche, although that was around a little bit more than some of the other games, was at Walt Disney World at the Contemporary Resort Hotel in the Fiesta Fun Center. They had an Avalanche. And it's an interesting game where things would drop, various size boulders. They would drop from the top of the screen, and you had to catch them basically onto paddles that you moved back and forth with the knob and the control. And not a real complicated game, but it had player appeal and it was fun. And it was made by the big company that was moving into the amusement market called Atari. And I mean, I don't know if everybody knows Atari today, but they were the foremost person jumping into all this video game market. They were really jumping on the bandwagon. The next one over is an anti-aircraft. Now, anti-aircraft, also, I believe, made by Atari. Yes, there it is. It's made by Atari. There's their symbol. They use the same little Atari buttons with the little, volcano-type crown. A very early game. I don't ever remember playing anti-aircraft. I'm sure there are those out there who do remember how to play it, but I never did, and I don't think I ever saw one before I bought it. This one was actually more popular. The Allied's Ace. Allied was actually Allied Leisure, and they made a lot of great games in the 70s, like Crack Shot and Speed Shift. They called it Super Shifter. They made a lot of really interesting electromechanical games. I believe they made the F1 too, also, and the F1 116, different things like that were electromechanical nature. Now they were getting into the video games, just like all the companies were trying to. And this is kind of like an airplane game, the old, double wing airplanes going around. I remember seeing it. I might have played it once or twice. It doesn't stick out in my memory as being, something I could tell you all about, so it wasn't that memorable a game, but I remember they were around. Why? Because they had the distribution, because they were already in the business with the other games. Next one over, a rather obscure game called Shark, is made by U.S. Billiards. Now, U.S. Billiards was a very small company in New Jersey, and they actually made Bimbo the Clown, which was a copy of Pepe the Clown from Williams back in the day. So, they were trying to get into the video game market also, and they came out with their version of a Jaws game called Shark. Again, I never even played this one, and it's interesting, the control buttons on this, they're very, very small and close together. I can't imagine that would be easy for people to play. But sure enough, there it is, and they had a rock switch on the counter there that's for novice and expert, and I guess a middle position for intermediate. Press to start. Those buttons are bigger than the player buttons. Looks like it's a 4-player game. Must have had some appeal. I didn't see a lot of them. Hey, here's a Flim Flam. Now, Flim Flam, I actually remember. They had a Flim Flam in Playland in Lavalette. That way, I used to call it Freddy's, and it was Playland. It was right on the corner of Bryn Mawr Avenue in North Lavalette at Route 35 North. And they were there when I was a kid growing up with all the electromechanical games. And suddenly, they got this game called Flim Flam. And you know what? People walked by it. They really didn't play it that much. And I remember the owner, Freddie, he said to me, knowing I was a kid who played a lot of games, he says, "Why don't you try this one over here?" And I tried it. And you know what? I tried it. I found it difficult. It wasn't really that intriguing to me. I played it a couple times, but it wasn't, like a Pong or anything else like that was simplistic and you really could have fun with another player on it. It had a green acetate over the screen, so the picture tube was green and white, and it was filled with dots all around, spaced out on the picture screen. And there was a ball that bounced around, and you had a joystick type little stick down there that you moved your paddle. And you would try, you know, like any other video game of the day, moving the paddle so that the ball would bounce off your paddle rather than passing your paddle to keep the ball alive. You'd bounce it all around the screen, and you tried basically to run over all the dots and make all the dots disappear. I mean, it was intriguing enough, but it was not something that I would just run over to play Flim Flam. But I have a memory of the game, so sure enough, there's a Flim Flam. These over here, I never saw these before I got them. They're called the Monsters. They're made by a company called Sonic. Now, Sonic, if it's the same company I'm thinking it is, was made in Spain, and it was kind of like a Williams company, but they were making them in Spain. They made pinball machines under the name Sonic, but they used the same systems as the Williams pinballs. This almost looks like the Demolition Derby, or the, what was the other one they called? The Death Race. We would run into things. Same type of setup, probably the same type of game where you're, you know, trying to hit monsters and make them freeze onto the screen. They all had a similar appeal at the time, but here's a couple of the Monsters games. I'm sure you're not going to find them everywhere. Over here we have an Atari Dominoes. Well, this was a little more mass-produced. Dominoes, I don't remember playing it, but I'm sure that it was very much like Checkmate, where you're trying to build a line and trying to box somebody in or your opponent on it, and this is the way the dominoes were. I don't remember playing it. I remember seeing it. They were around. So it was a game that was produced in decent quantities. The last one on the line is a game called Bombs Away. And again, a very unique cabinet. See, you know, all these cabinets had a unique look to them. They weren't kind of standardized. And I think that some of the reasons some of these games didn't take off was because of the odd-shaped cabinets. This machine is pretty wide. It takes up floor space on the arcade. And Bombs Away, I guess you're dropping bombs onto ships, you know, from the air, from the airplanes going by. Kind of press the button and see what you can drop on somebody. I don't remember the game. I don't remember playing the game. But here's one. It looks like it's in good shape, and it's just part of my early collection of black and white video games. These are the predecessors. They are important because they're part of the history of the amusement evolution that we went into video games. Later on, of course, everybody knows Asteroids, right? Well, Asteroids came out not that much longer after these games were here. I mean, certainly within the same decade, but everybody knows Asteroids, but people don't know these other ones because these were the beginning of the technology where they were starting, they were building an industry, they were learning how to make better games and what was more appealing towards the customers playing them. So you had your Asteroids. Then, of course, you got your Scramble down there. We got into Punch-Out and Congo Bongo, Space Fury. Space Fury is a really coveted game. It's got a really good voice generator on there, and it's kind of like a Cyclops spaceman who's, you know, one of these XY type monitors, and the eye goes back and forth, and he talks to you with a very clear voice.
So, a creature for my amusement. Prepare for battle.
People like to collect games like that, and yes, I know I'm going to hear from all you collectors out now who want me to sell you my Space Fury. Well, I don't think so. I like it too, you know, and all these games. Space Fury, I used to run Space Fury in Action Arcade when I was in Keensburg Amusement Park. It was one of my first games in the arcade there, so a lot of memories attached to that for me. This is part of the story. Everything connects. That's the common denominator here. My life in the amusement business. All these things I acquired. I kind of know where they came from. I don't know every place that game was because arcade games got moved around to different locations, but I know where I got it. So it's part of my life, and it's part of the history of my life in the amusement business. Main Street Randyland, right here. Hope you enjoyed it, and we will see you next time for another great episode. Bye, guys.